everyone. Today's deep dive is one I've been chewing on for a few months, especially as the new baseball season has fired up. It started when I was trying to book Rocky tickets a few weeks ago, and I was thinking about a Rockies game I went to last year. They were playing the Yankees at home in Coors Field. It was Memorial Day weekend, and there was a stranger next to me, an older gentleman. And, at some point during a lull in the game, we got to talking. He was from Salt Lake City. He was visiting. That wasn't the surprising part. The Rockies are the closest professional baseball team. But what he said next surprised me. His sons, both teenagers, had baseball tournaments and games the entire weekend in 3 different states. They had just happened to have a break that Saturday afternoon and were trying to catch the game since it was the Yankees. He had spent a hefty amount of money between the tournaments, travel costs, equipment costs, the game tickets, concessions, you name it. And he still had 2.5 days until just this stretch was done. It blew my mind. And I've read the same articles you probably have about how consuming youth sports is in America right now. The costs are going up. The time commitments are going up. But I'll be honest, at that point, my kids didn't do those intense sports, so I only had a high-level insight into what those elements looked and felt like on a day-to-day basis. The other incident happened just a few months ago, and you might have been a part of it too. During these most recent Winter Olympic Games, there was a lot of chatter around Norway and what made them so successful. Outlets like NBC and the Aspen Institute and CNN, even TikTokers, covered this so-called phenomenon. They were calling it the Norway. I saw the NBC feature on it at one point during the games. It stuck with me. Maybe you saw it too. And in case you've missed it, here's the cliff notes. Despite having less snow than other countries, less money, and paying zero financial incentives to its Olympic athletes, Norway has dominated during the last several Winter Games, especially when it comes to sports on skis. Their secret, as it has been framed, is how they champion youth sports. In fact, 9 out of 10 kids grow up playing sports in Norway, all participating under the vision that children have the right to safety, mastery, friendship, enjoyment, and freedom of choice. And from that charter, Norway was able to introduce policies that build athletes for life. They have no travel teams that sort kids by capabilities, no early specialization, no scores are recorded, there's no standings that are kept until age 11, there's no national championships until age 13. Compared to how America approaches youth sports, it kind of seems chaotic and unorganized, maybe even a bit basic. But here's the thing. Norway isn't just onto something. It's realized the issue and corrected it. Because there is a gap, a real, measurable, research-backed gap between what kids say they want out of youth sports and what the adults around them are actually buying. And that's not the adults' fault. Yes, on some sidelines, you probably do have that stereotype we've all heard where the parents are trying to live through their child, putting their own hopes and expectations on their kids. But in the majority of towns and cities, parents just want what's best for their kid and are willing to pay whatever amount of money it takes to give them that. But what the kids are asking for is also the thing that turns out to produce the best athletes in the world. And turns out it's free. And it got me thinking, why do kids in America say more and more that sports aren't fun anymore? Why do kids in Norway feel the exact opposite? What do kids mean by fun? And if fun is the so-called secret ingredient, the thing that separates the kids who stay in the sport long enough to become great from the kids who burn out at age 12, why is nobody selling that? Why is it the one thing that the youth sports industry seems to actually be leaning away from? There are plenty of athletes who weren't raised in this hyper-competitive youth sports culture and still went on to be drafted in pro sports leagues. We'll cover a few of them in this episode, but the narrative around them also tends to be that they're the exception. Their talent rose above the constraints they faced, whether that was time or money or location. I thought, what if instead of being the exception, they're the rule? That's what we're exploring in this episode. And before I get too deep, let me say this up front because I know where some of you are probably already going. This is not going to be an episode about how parents are the villain. I don't think they are. And like I said, I think the vast majority of them want their kid to succeed and be part of a community and feel welcomed. Sports offers all that and more. But I do think parents are doing exactly what a very well-designed system is asking them to do. The trick is realizing that system is missing a piece, and that piece is the one thing the kids have been asking for the whole time. Let's get into it. Let me set the stage by introducing you to a researcher named Dr. Amanda Visek. She works at George Washington University, and about a decade ago, she got curious about something that should be obvious, but hadn't been really studied. Adults talk a lot about kids having fun in sports. Every youth slogan out there has the word fun in it somewhere, but few researchers had ever actually asked the kids what fun meant to them. So she did. Hundreds of kids, ages 6 through 17, across multiple sports and competition levels. And she didn't hand them a list and say, rank these. She used a research method called concept mapping, where the kids generate the categories themselves in their own words. And that matters because the whole point was to find out what they thought, not what adults assumed they thought. The result is a study called the Fun Integration Theory, and it was published in the Journal of Physical Activity and Health. And the kids, when they were asked directly, identified 81 distinct things that made sports fun. 81. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because I want to read to you some of the top items on that list and some of the bottom, and I want you to hear the gap between the two. At the top, the things kids said mattered the most. Number 1, trying your best. Number 2, when a coach treats players with respect. Number 3, getting playing time. Number 4, playing well together as a team. Number 5, exercising and being active. Now, here's the bottom half of the list. Winning ranked 48th. Traveling to new places, 40th. Playing in tournaments, 63rd. Having a trainer or a private instructor, 66th. Earning medals and trophies, that fell in the bottom third of the list. So let that land for a second. The entire, and I do mean literally entire, with poured concrete and venture-backed software and private equity roll-ups, the entire $40 billion U.S. sports industry is built around the bottom half of the list that kids gave when someone thought to ask them. And I want to give a name for that because I'm going to come back to it throughout this episode. So I'm calling it the fun gap. It's the distance between what kids say makes a sport fun and what adults spend money on and time on in that sport. Every family's gap probably looks a little different, but across thousands of kids and dozens of sports, it's consistent and it's big. And let me quickly frame the industry piece because I do think it's important to understand what parents can be up against, but it's not the main point of this episode. Like I said, U.S. youth sports is now a $40 billion annual market, according to the Aspen Institute State of Play 2025 report. That's more than the annual revenue of the NFL or the NBA or the NHL. The average American family now pays a little over $1,000 per child per primary sport per year. And that number is a 46% increase since just 2019. And it's also more than triple the rate of inflation over that same period. And here's the stat that really matters. About 70% of U.S. kids quit organized sports by the age 13. The number one reason they give in survey after survey, going back years, is some version of, it's not fun anymore. So just so we're clear, we're spending more at a faster rate than inflation on a system that by age 13 has lost 70% of its participants to the single complaint the system was never designed to address. That is the fun gap. And for the rest of this episode, I want to walk through 3 things. 1, this gap just isn't annoying. It's actually a massive competitive disadvantage. And the countries that close it, hello, Norway, they are dominating global sport. 2, our refusal to close that gap is quietly eliminating future elite athletes before we even know who they are. And 3, closing the gap in your own family doesn't have to cost gobs of money. In fact, it doesn't have to cost any money. And you can start doing it this week. So let me tell you more about Norway. Like I said, Norway absolutely dominated the Winter Olympics this February in Milan Cortina. They finished on the top for the 3rd Winter Games in a row. Norway has about 5.5 million people. That's roughly the population of Minnesota. And they beat the U.S., They beat Germany. They beat every single country that has 10 times their population and 100 times their sports budget. On a per capita basis, Norway has won more Olympic gold medals than any other country in the history of the Winter Games. And their youth sports system, the one that produces those athletes, looks absolutely nothing like we do it in America. Remember, in Norway, there's no scorekeeping until age 13. None. No official scores at a U10 game, no standings, no league tables. There's no national championships for any sport before age 13. No regional competition before age 11. No online rankings, and if you try to post youth game results online in Norway, you can actually get fined for it. There's no travel teams, at least not in the American sense of the term. Kids play locally until they're teenagers. All kids get trophies, or none do. No individual performance prizes for being the best 9-year-old. Every single Norwegian sports club at every level has to operate under a set of national rules called the Children's Rights in Sports. That document has been around since 1987, and it's not optional. Clubs that violate it lose their recognition from the National Sports Federation. And on top of all of that, Norway caps costs. Annual youth sports participation typically runs under $1,000 per child per year, which is less than the average American family spent on one of their kids' sports in 2024. And you know what happens under this whole entire Norway system? 93% of Norwegian kids participate in organized sports. That's roughly 40 percentage points higher than the participation rate in the U.S. And more than 70% of those kids are still playing sports into their teenage years, which, not coincidentally, is the exact age range where American kids are quitting in droves. Now, I want to be fair here. Norway has snow. They have a different social safety net. They're smaller. They're more homogenous. You cannot just copy and paste their system onto a Tuesday night in Virginia or Texas and expect it to work. I'm not arguing for that even. What I am arguing is that Norway is running a live, almost 40-year-long experiment that tests the fun gap hypothesis. Kids perform better, and the system produces more elite athletes when the focus is around fun, not money, not competition. And every time the data comes in, the hypothesis looks correct. And I want to tell you about one specific Norwegian athlete because his story, I'm going to be honest, may be the single best case study of everything I've just talked about. His name is Johannes Husflot Klæbo. If you watched the Olympics in February, you saw him. He's the cross-country skier who won 6 gold medals. He broke the record for most gold medals at a single Winter Olympic Games, a record that had stood for 46 years. He is now, by pretty much every expert's account, the most decorated male cross-country skier in history. And he trails only Michael Phelps on the list of most decorated Winter and Summer Olympians in the modern era. His story has been told a lot these last few months. But here's the part I don't think anyone has told as well as it deserves. When Klæbo was 15 years old, his under-15 coach kept detailed training data on him. In his own training group of 25 boys, at age 15, Klæbo ranked 18th in the 60-meter sprint, 20th in chin-ups, 24th in uphill strides. And in all of Norway, in his age group, he ranked 100th. Now, if you had put 15-year-old Klæbo into the American youth sports system, he probably would have been cut. He would have been cut from the travel team by the time he was 9. By 13, someone would have told him politely that skiing probably wasn't for him. Maybe he should try something else. He would have been evaluated, ranked, and eliminated before his 15th birthday. Oh, and one more thing. Klæbo wasn't even trying to be a skier when he was a kid. His quote to the International Ski Federation, and I'm going to read it directly. "What I loved most was football. I spent virtually all my time on the pitch, and I was sure I would become a footballer." He was a soccer kid. He didn't commit to cross-country skiing until he was 16. His grandfather, who gave him his first pair of skis and is still his coach today at 83 years old, was the person picking him up from soccer practice so he'd have time for cross-country. So let's put that all together. The most decorated male cross-country skier of all time was, at age 15, a below-average skier in his own training group, ranked 100th in his country, and primarily playing a completely different sport. And the only reason we know who he is today is that his country didn't have a system for eliminating him. I've started summarizing this phenomena like this. In the US, early prediction is early elimination. Here's what I mean. Every time a youth sports system tries to identify elite athletes earlier through showcases, through rankings, elite clubs, specialization, travel leagues, it is not actually identifying those athletes. It's removing them. Because you cannot reliably predict an 18-year-old athlete from an 8-year-old athlete. Nobody can. The research on this is really not all that ambiguous either. And yet the entire American youth sports industry is built on the premise that you can. Let me walk you through some quick data, because it matters. The American Academy of Pediatrics published a clinical report on sport specialization in 2024 and found that early single sport specialization is associated with increased risk of overuse injury, higher rates of burnout, and a greater likelihood of quitting sports entirely, while doing nothing to improve the odds of reaching elite performance. Nothing. There was no measurable upside. And in a 2020 study in the Orthopedic Journal of Sports Medicine, they analyzed NFL first-round draft picks from 2008 through 2017. That's 318 athletes. 88% of them were multi-sport athletes in high school. Only 12% specialized in football alone. And when the researchers looked at NFL performance, games played, Pro Bowl selections, career longevity, there was zero advantage to single sport specialization. If anything, the single sport kids missed more games due to injury. And just to really beat the point home, I know it's a lot of data. A 2024 study out of Hospital for Special Surgery and UCSF looked at NBA first-round draft picks and found multi-sport high school athletes played in significantly more NBA games during their first 3 seasons. They also traveled greater distances and had lower injury rates. So even in the NBA, multi-sport kids were more durable, more available, and more productive. Now that 2018 NFL draft, 29 of the 32 first-round picks played multiple sports in high school. The number 1 overall pick that year, Baker Mayfield, was a high school baseball star. Saquon Barkley picked second, played basketball, and ran track. Sam Darnold was picked third, but he played basketball and baseball. Only 3 guys in the entire first round played only football. And even one of those, Josh Rosen, had been a nationally ranked junior tennis player before he eventually focused on football. So here's what the evidence is actually telling us. The professional leagues are full of multi-sport kids. The research on early specialization says specializing hurts you and doesn't help you. And the Norwegian system, which refuses to predict, produces more elite athletes per capita than any country on earth. The American system is running the literal opposite of everyone on those data points. And when you add in the industry piece, the fact that private equity has now consolidated huge chunks of this market, or the fact that Senator Chris Murphy testified to Congress in December that he was threatened with penalties for live streaming his own kid's hockey game from his phone, the system does not have a lot of financial incentive to shrink itself back down to a size that serves that local rec league. So here's my spicy take to close this section. The fun gap isn't a soft problem. It's not a vibes issue or a kumbaya complaint that kids need to just have fun, but they do. It is a competitive disadvantage. The things the industry has decided to charge American parents for, the showcases, the rankings, the specialization, the evaluations, those are not the things that produce elite athletes. If anything, those are the things that remove potential elite athletes from the system before we even know who they are. Every ranked U11 league and every paid scouting platform is functionally a filter. And filters don't find talent, they reject talent. We are paying a lot of money to reject our own kids. I want to push on this one step further because I think there's a related idea here that doesn't get nearly enough airtime. The conventional wisdom in American youth sports goes something like this. If your kid is serious about a sport, the way to get them to the top is to commit. Focus. Pick one and go all in. Because the kid who plays 3 sports is dividing their attention, right? They're not getting reps. They're falling behind the kid who's doing 80 hours a month in the same gym. What if the actual opposite is true? What if playing multiple sports doesn't hurt a kid's shot at elite performance? What if it's the reason they have a shot at it in the first place? Because when you look at the actual data, not the marketing, not the gut instinct, not what the travel team director is telling you, multi-sport kids aren't diluted. They're not behind. They're ahead. They have more varied athletic skills. They use different muscle groups so they get hurt less. They get mental breaks from any one sport so they burn out less. They get to be coached by different people with different philosophies. They get to be the star in one sport and the role player in another, which teaches them both leadership and humility before their brains are even fully developed. And here's the kicker to me. Multi-sport kids naturally close the fun gap on their own without anyone having to engineer it for them. Because when a kid plays 3 sports, no single one of them has the power to become the only thing in their life. Instead, the pressure gets distributed. That's the thread I want you to pull on. Because every piece of research I cited, every Olympic athlete I could name, every data point on the multi-sport kids in the NFL or the NBA, it all points to the same thing. The way you build a great athlete is not by narrowing them. It's by widening them for as long as possible and then letting them narrow when they're ready because they want to. Specialization is supposed to be the shortcut to elite. But what the data actually shows is that it's the shortcut to out. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. My kid wants to be in this. They asked to go to practice. They asked for the travel team. They cried when they didn't make the A team. I'm not projecting my dreams onto them. They genuinely love it. Or another thing I've heard is the stat that comes up, I don't know, every so often, that 95% of Fortune 500 CEOs played sports, and something like 96% of women in the C-suite were athletes. A lot of people read that and think, yeah, I'm investing in this. The data says it pays off. And if all of that is you, hear me out. I'm not telling you you're wrong. Nobody in the system is evil. As parents, we don't want to be the one whose kid got left behind. Coaches run tournaments because tournaments are where the money is. Clubs push specialization because specialized kids stay in the club longer and generate more revenue. The whole system is rational at every single level. It's just in aggregate working against the kids. I am not saying youth sports are bad. I'm not telling you competition is harmful. I'm definitely not telling you your kid is being damaged by being on a travel team. It's none of that. Youth sports are one of the best things a kid can do. The research on that is unambiguous. Sports participation is associated with better physical health, better mental health, better grades, better social outcomes, and yes, better career outcomes. So I am pro sports, pro competition. I am pro kids chasing something hard and figuring out how to get back up when they fall down. But I do want to clarify something, especially that CEO stat. That stat, it's real. Fortune has estimated that around 95% of Fortune 500 CEOs played sports. Ernst & Young surveyed 821 high-level female executives and found 90% of them played sports at some point in their lives. That rose to 94 to 96% of women currently in the C-suite. These are real numbers. I'm not here to tell you that they're made up. What I am going to tell you is look at what those stats actually measure, because when I dug into them, the picture they paint is a little different from what a reel or an Instagram post is going to tell you. The 95% is played sports in general at some level. It is not played D1. It is not specialized early. It is not was on a travel team by age 9. When Psychology Today assigned a researcher in 2024 to go CEO by CEO across the Fortune 500 and actually verify how many of them played at the collegiate level, they could not replicate the 95%. They got about 66%, which is still a high number, to be clear, but it's very different from 95. And in that Ernst & Young study on women executives, 90 to 96% of them played sports, yes, but only 52% of them played at university level. So the actual finding here, the real, careful, read the methodology finding is this. The successful executive population is full of people who played sports. It is not disproportionately full of people who specialized early, played D1, and optimized their youth athletic career like a venture capital portfolio. Most of these people just played, honestly, often at the high school level, often multiple sports with no intention of going pro or being recruited. Sports were a part of their life, but wasn't their whole life. And the strongest research I found on this comes from Korn Ferry, which, if you don't know them, is one of the biggest executive leadership consulting firms in the world. They analyze what distinguishes high-performing women CEOs from average CEOs. And the traits that mattered weren't won the most trophies or specialized earliest. They were nerves of steel, situational self-awareness, tolerance of ambiguity, and I love this one, being driven by challenge. And I want to read you the specific advice Korn Ferry gave parents based on their own data because I think it's great. Here's their quote. Parents shouldn't count their kids as home runs or assists, but instead start tracking instances of courage, risk-taking, and resilience. So that's an executive leadership firm saying that the thing you're optimizing for in youth sports should not be the scoreboard. So I am not arguing against your kid playing. I am arguing for your kid playing in a way that actually delivers the thing the CEO stat is pointing at. Because if your kid loves the sport and wants to compete, that is a superpower. Protect it. Don't burn it out. The CEOs in that study didn't get there by being the best 11-year-old in the tri-state area. They probably got there by still loving sports when they were 19. And the single best predictor of whether your kids still love sports at 19 is whether it's fun for them right now. The fun gap isn't the enemy of competitive kids. It's the reason they stay competitive long enough to matter. Now, I have thrown a lot of research at you, so I'm going to stop telling you and start showing you where all of this has been put into practice. Because I think the names I'm about to share tell the story better than any of the numbers do, and these three are some of the biggest names in American sports right now. All three played multiple sports well into their teenage years. All three had parents who protected the fun instead of monetizing it. And all three probably shouldn't be this good on paper, and they are anyway. So let's start with Patrick Mahomes. If you're a football fan, you already know his basic story. 3-time Super Bowl champion, multi-time league MVP. He's one of the top faces, maybe the face of the NFL. His 10-year, $500 million contract in 2020 was the biggest in the history of professional sports at that time. This guy is doing things at the quarterback position that nobody has done before him. And if you look him up in some stats, he's better than Tom Brady was at Patrick's age. But here's where this episode hits home. Mahomes grew up in a tiny town in East Texas. His dad, Pat Mahomes Sr., was a former Major League Baseball pitcher. He had pitched for the Twins, the Red Sox, the Mets, a couple other teams. And his dad intentionally raised Patrick as a 3-sport athlete: football, basketball, and baseball, all the way through high school. And Patrick wasn't just dabbling in them either. He was genuinely elite in all three. In his senior year of high school, he threw for over 4,600 yards and 50 touchdowns as a quarterback. That same year on the basketball court, he averaged 19 points and 8 rebounds a game. And that same spring on the baseball diamond, he threw a no-hitter with 16 strikeouts. In fact, Patrick was so good at baseball that the Detroit Tigers, my Detroit Tigers, drafted him in the 37th round of the 2014 MLB draft. Now, clearly, he didn't sign. He went to Texas Tech to play football. But even there, he kept playing college baseball for a year as a relief pitcher. He didn't fully commit to just football until he was 20 years old. And Mahomes himself has said multiple times that he credits his quarterback arm strength to baseball, not to throwing footballs, to pitching. He credits his ability to improvise on broken plays to basketball, the pickup instincts he developed when he was constantly reading a defense and adjusting on the fly. If the Mahomes family had done what a lot of American families do right now, the NFL does not get Patrick Mahomes. They get someone who has only ever thrown a football and who walks into the league with a fraction of the toolkit. Second name, Caitlin Clark. You know Caitlin, all-time leading scorer in the NCAA Division I basketball, men's or women's. Number 1 overall draft pick in the 2024 WNBA draft. She single-handedly has reshaped the economics of women's basketball in this country. Here is the list of sports she played growing up in Des Moines, Iowa. Basketball, volleyball, tennis, softball, golf, and, most relevantly, soccer. She played soccer on the varsity team at Dowling Catholic her freshman and sophomore years of high school. As a freshman, she scored 23 goals on the varsity soccer squad and was named All-Iowa. She didn't drop soccer to focus on basketball until after her sophomore year. And even then, she's been pretty open about the fact that she wasn't trying to game her athletic future. She was 14, 15 years old, and she played the sport that was most fun that day. In fact, here's what she said on 60 Minutes about where her deep range shooting comes from. And I'm going to read this directly. I was a soccer player growing up, and I think that's where I kind of got my leg strength from. So think about that. The thing that allows Caitlin Clark to shoot 3-pointers from 30 feet away is soccer leg strength, developed by scoring 23 goals as a 14-year-old, not in a shooting lab, not with a private trainer, on a soccer field. And the last one, Steph Curry. Steph is, depending on who you ask, the greatest shooter in the history of basketball. 4 NBA championships, 2 MVPs, single-handedly revolutionized the way professional basketball is played. But if we run Steph Curry through the whole American youth sports filter, he probably doesn't make it. And here's why. Del Curry, Steph's dad, was a 16-year NBA veteran. He was drafted in the first round in 1986, and he also played college baseball at Virginia Tech and was drafted by the Baltimore Orioles in the 14th round of the 1985 MLB draft. His wife, Sonia, played college volleyball at Virginia Tech and ran track. So Steph grew up in a household where both parents were multi-sport Division I athletes. Here's what Del did with his kids. He deliberately didn't push Steph into basketball. In fact, he has said publicly that he never once woke Steph up to drag him to the gym. Steph has said that in 7th grade, he almost quit basketball to focus on baseball. He said, "It wasn't like I always wanted to be a pro basketball player. I had to make that decision. Dad always told us that whatever we wanted to do, he'd support us. He wasn't ever going to push us to the gym, and that helped me a lot because my work ethic has always been my own and not someone else forcing it on me." So Del Curry, a guy who knew exactly how hard the basketball pipeline is, deliberately refused to use his access to it to pressure his son into it. And one more thing about Steph, when he was coming out of high school, he wanted to play college basketball at Virginia Tech. That's where his dad went. Virginia Tech offered him a walk-on spot, not a scholarship. Duke didn't recruit him. North Carolina didn't recruit him. My own Michigan State Spartans didn't recruit him. He ended up at Davidson, a school with, 2,000 students, because it was the only program that really wanted him. Steph Curry was the quintessential kid that the American system doesn't predict. And he's now one of the most important players in the entire history of the sport. So 3 athletes, 3 sports, 3 different stories, 1 pattern. None of them were sorted early. None of them specialized young. All of them had parents who protected the fun, whether that was by intentionally keeping them in multiple sports or by refusing to push them into one. And all 3 of them are currently at the absolute top of what a human can do in a professional sport. These are not exceptions. They're not miracles. What they are is the rule. A rule we have stopped being willing to see because we're too busy writing checks for the exception. Okay, you can't change private equity. You can't personally move your family to Norway. So what can you actually do? Well, here's 3 questions that I found that any parent can ask this week. And this comes directly out of what Visek's kids told her they wanted. You could probably start using them tomorrow. First question, ask your kid, what part of this do you actually love? Not how was practice, not did you win. Ask them what part of the sport lights them up. What do they look forward to? Or what don't they want to leave when practice or a game is done? If they can't name anything, that's probably your answer. If they name 3 things, though, being with friends, the warm-up game, the drill their coach invented, the snack, good snacks. Those 3 things are that sport for that kid. Everything else is logistics. Protect those things. For what it's worth, Visek's research says kids can answer this question at a remarkable level of specificity when an adult asks without an agenda. That last part is key. Not, what do you love about it because I'm about to sign you up for something? Just the question, open-ended, no pressure. See what they say. Second question, where is our money going? Top of the list or bottom? Pull up your kid's calendar, pull up your bank statement, put those 81 things that Visek showed mentally next to them. And be honest about which items on the list are actually being funded. Coach quality, a safe playing space, enough playing time, top of the list. Private trainer for a 9-year-old or an out-of-state showcase, a $15 live stream subscription so grandma or grandpa can watch from home, that might be more bottom of the list. And this isn't about spending less necessarily. A great local club with great coaches can cost real money. I get that. This is about spending aligned with what the kid actually finds fun, instead of aligned with what the industry has convinced you good elite kids' parents do. Third and final question, am I protecting free play? Here's a data point from Aspen's 2025 State of Play survey that needs to be shouted. Kids from the lowest income households in America now engage in more free, unstructured play than kids from the highest income households. Pickup games, backyard one-on-one, kicking a ball around a cul-de-sac. That is where most of the top of Visek's fun list lives. That is where friendships form. That is where kids try new sports without consequences. And it's free. You can't buy it from a private equity roll-up, which is part of why it's probably disappearing. Norway builds that free play into their system by capping how much structured competition is legally allowed. You can do the same thing in your own family by blocking one afternoon a week where nothing is scheduled and a ball is just somewhere the kid can find it. That's it. That's the whole intervention. And notice, none of these three questions cost money. At least I hope they don't. None of them require you to pull your kid out of anything or to be the weird parent at the team meeting. It's just recalibration. These close the fun gap without you having to fight the entire industry to do it. So I'll end with a conversation I actually just had a few days ago with my own child. My daughter is 6 right now, and she wants to try everything. Soccer, gymnastics, swimming, running club, karate, softball, dance. For the longest time, I'll admit, I have told her she has to pick one thing. Partially because, in my defense, there are not enough hours in the day to do all those things and go to school. But also because I kept telling myself if she really wants to apply herself, she needs to be totally committed and pick one and have no other distractions. After doing the research for this episode, I'm changing my tune. I don't know if my bank account can support all of those sports. But if she wants to pick 2 or 3, well, why not? Because here again is what the research and Norway and 88% of the first round of the NFL draft and Patrick Mahomes and Caitlin Clark and Dr. Visek's 81 things all keep telling us. The kid who makes it is not the kid whose parents optimized earliest. It is the kid whose parents protected the top of that list the longest. It's the kid who had friends on the bench. It's the kid whose coach treated them with respect. It's the kid who got enough playing time to fall in love with the game. It's the kid who had enough unstructured hours to still want the game when they were 15 and ranked 100th in their country. Early prediction is early elimination. The system that tries to find the winner by age 10 misses the 15-year-old who will probably become the champion. So the answer isn't care less about your kid's sports. I don't even think necessarily the answer is spend less, though for a lot of families that will probably turn out to be a nice side effect. I think the real answer is much smaller, and it's this. Close the gap. Ask your kid what they love, fund the top of the list, protect the free play, and let it be fun for a really long time. Because fun turns out to be the thing that keeps them in the arena, and the arena is the only place where anyone has ever become great at anything. Thanks for spending time with us in the middle. If today's story caught your attention, drop a subscribe, share the episode, follow us on social media, and remember, it ain't over till it's over.